Is this working? Hello. I think that's working. Let me know if you can't hear it. We're going live to answer your questions. I don't know why I say live in an announcer voice, but I'm looking forward to answering all your questions. We're starting in just a minute. Right on time. I hope. Let me double check this with my sound technician, which is me. Doesn't say I'm live here. Excellent. Good. Hello, everyone. I think it's working. Okay, if you can't hear me, well, you probably can't hear me, but if you can't hear me and read lips, just put it in the comments there. Hello, everyone. Hope this works. Welcome to our live chat, and we are going to answer all your questions, or maybe not answer them. So, welcome everybody. Yes, we're getting comments. Excellent. Good. I think I'm a little hooked on this social media thing. Maybe too much. Lovely weather here. It is lovely. I've just got the door open. Sorry about the glare, but it's beautiful out there. Hope it is where you are. Lots of lovely wind. Hello, everyone. So I've got some wonderful questions. We're going to dive right in. Well, I'll read the questions first, and then I'll dive in. I got several questions. If I don't read yours, it's out of neglect rather than anything, not conscious neglect. I'm trying to put them all together from WhatsApp and Messenger, and if I forget yours, we do put it in the comments. If you have one that springs to mind, put it in the comments. All are welcome to add them. But here's the questions we have. What is today's date with the digit reverse? What is our purpose? Why is there suffering? What does the future of Unitarianism look like? These are hard ones. Which was the better Super Bowl, 47 or 51? And I got the Roman numerals like that. I'm quite proud of myself. When I was 20, why did I grow a mustache? I have a few hypotheses, Lewis, but I'm not sure. How can one religion be the right religion, the true religion? Do you think there might be a cultural evolution away from the handshake? Why do birds not hang upside down from telephone wires? You drop your toast. Why does it always land butter side down? Classic question. Really good one. Why is it when trying to leave a room in a dramatic temper, the door refuses to slam shut, but when trying to sneak in at 3 a.m. after a night on the beer, every sliding door sounds like an earthquake? Not that I have any personal experience of that, but I might be able to wager an answer. Perhaps you have your own thoughts on that. Can you tell us a little more about Connecticut? I was not expecting that one. Lovely question. What would you pick or shovel? What would you be or a wasp? Do Orthodox Christians believe that when Jesus prayed, he said, "Dear God, it's me, you"? Do you watch Only Fools and Horses? And if so, do you like it? Why is Janice Dillon, my last name, hyphenated? Is there anything as a church that is built on greed and not on Yeshua's teachings? In what non-water situations has it been advantageous for you to be amphibious? Do angels need lottery funding? Why don't Unitarians celebrate communion as most other Christian churches do? And some do, as we'll say. And one on the divinity of Christ and miracles, one on how they get the chocolate so smooth in Maltesers. What does it mean to pray to the Lord? What does Lord mean in theological parlance in Unitarianism or Christianity more broadly? When a Shetland pony sees a Shire horse, does it believe it has met God? Do you feel the new move to buy local will be beneficial to the environment long term? And do you think that the drop in pollution levels may lead to more environmental awareness? Some great questions. It's going to take about 20 minutes, I think, to answer them all, and we'll be so much wiser by the end of it, or not. But I'll definitely give them a go. So, what are we going to start with? What is today's date with the digits reversed? 42. We're good, right? That's the answer. So we're good. That's from, of course, Douglas Adams. To the galaxy. I'm not saying all the names on these. That's some people want to say anonymous, but it's a very good one. Let's go with this one, actually. I've always wondered how people can be so sure their religion is the right one, when often it is somewhat arbitrary, i.e., depending on country, culture of birth, parents, etc. I suppose another way of looking at it is, how can only one religion be true? It's a very good question. I grew up Unitarian. I'm a Unitarian, so I've certainly cultural upbringing had a lot to do with it. I don't actually think that Unitarianism or Unitarian Christianity or Unitarian Universalism, any of the different kind of ways of parsing Unitarianism, is the only religion or necessarily the right religion, and all the other ones are wrong. I think it's a very challenging question. For me, I think every religion has a little bit of the truth to it. And I may have told that story about the elephant, how people see only a little bit of the elephant. It's an old story from I believe, from the Hindu tradition. So there's truth in every religion. Some see the ear of the elephant and say that's the truth. Some see the tail and say that's the truth. And all really, we only see a piece of the puzzle. So the truth is greater than any of our wisdom. Having said that, I do think there's something for diving into a particular religion. I get the point of looking at all religions, and I love to study world religions, even though I'm not a great scholar of world religions by any means. But I just thought of it the other day, kind of like, imagine if you had a grand mansion. I don't, as you can probably see, but you can have the entryway where you can see all the rooms, and you might want to live your life in the entryway, but then really most people wouldn't. You'd want to pick a particular room, maybe where you spend more time. And for me, it's probably been Christianity, though I do spend some time in Buddhism and Hinduism and certainly Judaism. But there are certain parts of the house where you spend time and you sort of live out of that tradition. So our tradition is deeply important to us. I don't. My personal belief is not. Is I doubt if we ever have everything revealed to us, that one religion will be revealed to be absolutely correct and all the others are absolutely wrong. I suspect that's not the case. Other people may disagree with me, that's fine, but I do think there is a lot of wisdom in the different traditions. I do think the traditions are different. They're not all just saying the same thing in different words, but I think there's lots to be gained from all the different traditions. Speaking of which, it's first day of Ramadan today, isn't it? A happy Ramadan, blessed Ramadan to those celebrating. Why do birds not hang upside down from telephone wires? This one stumped me, and I actually went to the internet, source of all knowledge. It's a really interesting thing, actually. So, why do birds? Another way of looking at it is, why do bats hang upside down and birds not? And I can answer that question. I can't answer the birds question. I don't know why they don't hang upside down. I would have. But why do bats hang upside down, I wonder? And I got an answer of sorts. It's because they're mammals, and mammals have a different weight distribution. They're a little bit heavier, right? So they actually, this is awesome, they actually hang upside down so that they can get some speed, among other reasons. They can hide from predators. There's other reasons. Biology is complicated. But really, they hang upside down so that when they fly, it's a little difficult for them to get off the ground. So when they fly, they go whoosh, and the speed helps them take off. So there you go. That's why bats hang upside down. And birds, I guess they don't need to do that, so they don't bother because they get busy. So I guess it matches things. But why they couldn't, I don't know. But I don't know if it's single. Does anyone know a bird that hangs upside down? I don't. So who knows? Well, let's go with another one. Why, when you drop your toast, why does it always land butter side down? I don't know, because I always catch my toast. I'm just an amazing object catcher. I think it's similar to the back question. I think it's probably the same answer, which is weight distribution. Um, Another question: which was the better Super Bowl? Super Bowl 2013 or Super Bowl 2017? I have to go 2017 because it's such an amazing comeback. Even though I'm not a Pats fan, the Patriots, the New England Patriots and Robert Kraft. It's a long story, but a lot of people in Connecticut don't like the Patriots. Robert Kraft. He said he was going to move here, but it was just. Which brings me to my next question. Can you tell us a little more about Connecticut? And I love that because nobody ever asks. Even in America, people just say, "Oh, Connecticut's between Boston and New York," which is more or less true. Connecticut's a lovely little state. It is a small state. It doesn't have any large cities. It's got Hartford and New Haven, two lovely cities, and Bridgeport, another lovely city. I know people knock on Bridgeport, but I quite like Bridgeport actually. And it's got some lovely forests. It's not a big forest like Maine or New Hampshire, but some really good walks. And it's a city of kind of small towns and small cities, a state of small towns and small cities. And it's a charming place in its way. It kind of falls in the middle there of Boston and New York and kind of gets forgotten. But I'm so glad somebody mentioned it. I haven't been to Connecticut for a while now, so thank you for mentioning that. And I know if this is Facebook land, there might be one of my friends from Connecticut. So shout out to Connecticut, lovely state. I recommend it to you. With a serious one, huh? What is our purpose? Whew. Don't know if I talked about this last time. What is our purpose? I think I might have said I kind of like the idea, and Aristotle kind of gets at it, and other people get it. Existentialism definitely gets at it. That maybe we don't have one purpose. Maybe we get to choose our purpose, which is kind of interesting. Try to find our purpose, and maybe we could go one way. Maybe we go one way and be a circus performer, and another way and be very materialistic, and another way and be deeply spiritual. So maybe we have some say about what our purpose is, and it's not set in stone. or maybe it's fate. I don't know. But what is our purpose? I don't know, and I think we have to kind of. It's a really important question that we need to piece out through living. It's not easy to simply say it. I will say one of the things that appeals to me that I find intellectually and emotionally challenging is this idea that our purpose may not have to do with our own story. So my purpose may be some act of kindness that has really very little to do with me, except I have something, and I'm there for somebody else. Maybe I'm an inspiration. Maybe I'm a warning to somebody else, right? But that can be a purpose. So I think there's a wonderful story by I don't remember who it's by now. I apologize about the squirrel finding its purpose, and the squirrel's purpose is tied in with all the other creatures' purpose. Because a squirrel runs across the road and makes us hug more carefully, and a squirrel drops a nut, and somebody else eats the nut. So our purpose isn't just what makes our own life meaningful, but how we can be there for others, and not just how we can be there for others in ways that are satisfying to us, but ways we may not know about, or um, simply happenstance in the way things are. So this could be about what our purpose is. When I was 20, why did I grow a mustache? When I was 18, I think, I had long hair and then I cut it all off, which was probably the reason I had long hair for 3 years, though I didn't know it at the time. I cut it all off and I think I shaved it. And I walked into at uni where I was and shocked. The people I lived with didn't even know it was me. And that was a fun 3 seconds. So that was probably why I grew long hair and probably why I shaved it all off. As you see now, I'm somewhere in the middle, so it's a bit long. It's hard to do it. It's backwards on here. Anyway, what would you be or a wasp? I would ant. Would ant, get it? Let's do another one here. Here's a good serious one. Do you think that the drop in pollution levels may lead to more environmental awareness? I hope so. I actually have a whole video up on YouTube just today that I'll link to. This is a little self-promotion. An Earth Day talk about six positive things that may come out of this terrible time ecologically, and not just. I know we've all felt the pollution. I was actually just saying hi from 6 feet away, social distancing, to folks at the shelter, and all of us had noted that the air is cleaner. And we're in town. We're not out in the country, but the air feels a lot cleaner, and the birds are louder. So I think this will seep into our bones a little bit. I don't think we'll instantly become ecologically completely in right relationship with the earth when this ends, but I think it has maybe a new environmental awareness has crept into our bones by this time. It's going to stay with us this time in funny ways. It may be a gradual thing, and it may be stopping and starting, but I do think there is something about how this is an opportunity. And as I say, in Extinction Rebellion, which I'm a part of, and is that we can't go back from here. We can't go back to normal, because normal was not normal. Using so many of the Earth's resources and just heading towards personal extinction and extinction of so many other species. So we don't. I know people want to change how we are now. I know it's a really hard time, but we also don't want to go back to what's before. So this needs to be a time of dreaming as well as a hard time of dreaming real dreaming about what's coming next, and we need to live into that dream. Other people want to comment on that, you can. Let's go into Unitarianism. Why don't Unitarians celebrate communion as most other Christian churches do? Someone said we do, actually. Several congregations, whether it be in UK where I am, or in the US or the Philippines, or there are several congregations that celebrate communion. We tend to be more on the symbolic side of things. I know some Unitarians and others are put off by communion by this whole idea of drinking blood and eating the body, to put it kind of in a well, as it is, though it sounds crude. But I think there's something to that meal that is we do communion in the churches I serve, and there's all of the most special moments in my life. Most of them have had something to do with a meal, and Jesus knew that, I think, in this sort of Last Supper, and talked about this in a symbolic way. And I don't think he meant it to be quite so formalized, or maybe he did, but I don't know. But I think there's something powerful in that sharing sharing Jesus's essence, as it were, with one another. So I think communion is quite a powerful ritual in that way. But different Unitarians will have different idea about it. That's fine. Somebody asked, do Orthodox Christians believe when Jesus prayed, he said, "Dear God, it's me, you"? There are lots of mysteries to the Trinity, and as I said, as a pretty much, well, basically non-Orthodox Christian, I'll leave that to my Orthodox sisters and brothers to answer. I think there's a lot of mystery in the Trinity. I have a lot of time for the Trinity. I think those who aren't Unitarians think that we Unitarians spend a lot of time, spend every service countering the Trinity because of our name. I actually very rarely talk about it. And thanks to the Moravians have learned a lot about the Trinity, and I think there's a lot of wonderful mystery in the kind of interplay of three different things, three different essences, three different natures of God. For me, it's quite powerful. So I'm not a Trinitarian really, but I have a lot of time for the Trinity. What does the future of Unitarianism look like? Well, we're on Unitarianism, and then we'll move off from Unitarianism for a little bit. I don't know. It's a really good question. I wonder about it a lot. I always feel a little bit guilty because Unitarianism has been very good to me. I was a Unitarian Universalist before I was Unitarian. Most of my life I was Unitarian. But I'm not really an institutionalist at heart. And so part of me thinks, if Unitarianism goes tomorrow, that's not the most important thing. Something about what we are. And I say that I go to, I love going to General Assembly. I'm involved in various committees. But to me, the heart of the question, I always try and not be too attached to either the word Unitarian or the movement Unitarian, even though I've given so many hours, gratefully, and they've given so much to me. And I'll probably be a Unitarian for life. Who knows? But yeah, but what does it look like? I think Unitarianism. So, in the time of Thomas Jefferson, he said everybody in America will be a Unitarian by the time I'm an old man, and that didn't happen, as you know. And I think we've always been overestimating our potential a little bit, even though we've had an enormous effect on social issues. And I think Unitarianism is poised. I don't think it's poised to be in the place where everyone be a Unitarian, because it's hard to define itself Unitarianism because we're so open to so many things, because we're on the edge of so many different things. Even though being non-dogmatic and not having a creed and embracing diversity are all wonderful things, I think it can be institutionally hard to build a movement around that. So I think we're always on the edge, and actually I kind of like that. I'm kind of an on the edge. That makes me sound like Tom Cruise, but I mean in the movies. I wasn't talking about religion, I think there's something to that being on the margins, and even if we're not large, having it on the world. So that's that. Unitarianism. Let's see, what have we got? We're racing through these questions. So if you have any others, we're going. This one is a great one. Always, do you think there may be a cultural evolution away from the handshake? How do you greet new cultural practices in general, and is this any way different? That is a wonderful question. I like to think that I'm very open to new cultural practices. However, I would mourn the loss of a handshake a great deal, and I'll say why. It's because for me, it's an incredible tool of humanity. In that, I go in a lot of different places. I try to connect with a lot of different people in a lot of different situations in life. And one of the things is I find a handshake is so powerful that I'm willing to shake anyone's hand. And that sounds so basic. It sounds so trivial. And of course, I'd be willing to shake anyone's hand. But I'm always amazed by how that touch is a symbol of, where that common humanity. It's really, really powerful. So I wonder, I can understand why it would evolve, but I don't know what will come in its place. And I think that touch is so wonderful. So are hugs and kisses. When you think about kisses, read a whole thing on the evolution of the kiss, and the handshake actually evolved from the kiss is one thing that I read, that the kisses took off in ancient Rome, would you believe? Well, they took off before that in India. You've probably heard of the Kama Sutra, and that was part of it. They were aware of kissing and what a wonderful thing it was. And then the Romans, through Alexander the Great, just a little before the Romans, it started kissing really took off throughout the Western world. And people said, what a wonderful thing. And then they had to actually ban it because it was spreading too many diseases in the early church, the kiss of peace, which was a big part of church practice and still is in many places. So there's this long history of kissing, which has a history of religion as well as a history of sexuality. So fascinating stuff. So what does that have to do? And then that became a handshake when they saw moved away from kissing and started kissing hands, and then they thought shaking hands. So shaking hands has a very intimate background. What's next? I don't know. And what's the future of touch for humanity? I mean, both because of coronavirus, right? But also because of so much virtual stuff, and I think it does change our brain. So I think I'm trying not to have too many assumptions about what we're going to want as far as touch. I know that many of us crave touch, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I think just to feel a hand and shoulder is a very powerful and reassuring thing. So I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, and yet things can change from generation to generation. So who knows? Anybody else have thoughts on that? Feel free to say. Why is Janice Dillon hyphenated? Because of marriage. I've been married to Dylan, and I come from a Janice side. Tried to do Dylan, Janice, Janice, Dylan, and it still made me Bob Dylan either way, which didn't do anything for my singing voice. But that's it. It's always a tricky thing. We tried to combine it, but Janillian, Dillis, just didn't. Although I know Dillis. Hi, Dillis. Anyway, so that's that. You watch Only Fools and Horses, and if so, do you like it? I've seen a little of it, and I do like it. I haven't seen very much, though. Some of you may know, I with a dear colleague from the Church of England, presided. Her and I presided on a funeral where the hearse was the car, the three-wheeled car from Only Fools and Horses, and that was a very special memorial, as memorials often are. Let me see. Oh, okay. Miracles. Here's a go. So, what is the Unitarian view of the more supernatural aspects of Jesus? Say, virgin birth, miracles, resurrection. So that's a big one. I don't want to speak for all Unitarians. Um, I can try to generalize. I won't do it very well. A lot of Unitarians, we tend to be more the rationalist side of things. So with some other more rationalist Christians, we tend to we tend to either say we don't know, or often say, well, maybe they're just symbolic, or maybe they were the writer putting that in. I don't know, and that's the same question about miracles in this day. I've seen we talk about, especially around death and life. There are things that have happened, and I've had a number of people tell me about things that have happened after death, where favorite animal appeared, or just things that they some sign that from the deceased. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's and I certainly don't know what happened 2,000 years ago. I'll say for myself, I'm always, as you can probably tell from the way I talk, I'm always hesitant to kind of claim my stake, and a bit wishy-washy, I suppose. But I do note that I don't think Jesus' emphasis uh, was on the miracles per se. I mean, if Jesus was all powerful, which is a big assumption, we won't go too much into that. He could have presumably healed everyone and didn't. So Jesus, the miracles weren't there simply to be miracles. They were there, whether literally or however you want to put it, metaphorically, they were there for some larger point. And that's about keeping our eyes open to the change of heart, the metanoia, the turning towards the divine, the trusting in God, however you want to put it, that sense of wonder in the world. So that's what the miracles were about. I think a lot of Unitarians have their questions about the virgin birth in particular. There's different things about the Greek, and does the Greek really mean virgin, or does it mean young woman? And it's a wonderful conversation. I won't get into it here, but we can have a lot. There's a lot of questions about that. Resurrection's a whole another. There's a lot of different Unitarian views about resurrection, whether there was a resurrection, and certainly for the Christian movement, there was something that happened that has affected the Christian movement for 2,000 years, or whether it was symbolic, or whether it represented the resurrection of Christianity, or what have you. That's a really good one. Moving away from miracles, sort of. How did they get the chocolate so smooth on the Malteser? Well, I thought everyone knew this, but Maltesers are, don't know how to put this, pooped out by the Easter Bunny, so that's pretty obvious. And so It's okay. They're still fine to eat. I have it on sure-footed medical advice. But there you go. Oh, this is a good one. When one prays to the Lord, are we talking Lord God or Lord Jesus? And so for a Christian, it may be the same, but for a Unitarian, when we say Lord, a lot of Unitarians don't like the word Lord because it can be, it's sort of hierarchical. It's kind of this image of, who has lords anymore? So think of God as more loving force than a Lord. I do use the word Lord in prayer. I'm not exactly sure what that's about. I like the sound of the word. I know that sounds trivial, but I think prayer is primarily oral. A lot of prayers are. And Lord has this sort of I always think of Leadbelly singing when I say it, to be honest. But the Lord has this kind of calling out sense to it. And it's also saying that we're not in control, right? So I'm not big on lords and ladies, but I do still occasionally use the word. I try not to overuse it. And I think it's meaningful to some people. It does have that primal, prayerful sense. I do understand we don't want to kind of be viewing God as a feudal lord. That's not most people's image of the divine. And I do try to talk about God as a loving grandmother, which is one of my favorites. Yeah, I do kind of like the word Lord, and I'm probably just a dinosaur. When a Shetland pony sees a Shire horse, does it believe it has met God? Well, maybe it has. Maybe God is a Shire horse. Could be. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. Don't really know. Still got why is there suffering? That's a good one. Well, why is it when trying to leave a room in a dramatic temper, the door refuses to slam shut, but when trying to sneak in at 3 a.m., it's noisy? Again, I'm asleep by 8 these days. I can't remember. I'm sure it was very noisy at 3 a.m. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe somebody else has an answer to that. We're almost through to the end of here. Let me see. Is there anything as a church that is built on greed and not in Yeshua's teachings? Yeshua being a name of Jesus. I think there's plenty in the church, and I speak certainly in Unitarian Universalism and any institution. Greed finds a way in because it's human. Found a way into the disciples, didn't it? So, but I think Jesus recognized that, and Yeshua's teachings meet us where we are. I think as human beings. So it's not saying that we're never going to be greedy, but there's that powerful thing. Do angels need lottery funding? I'm going to say no. I don't think I do either. So don't be sending your donations to me. There's lots of people who need it more than me. If anyone needs lottery funding, feel free to speak up. But I don't have any control over that. Having never won the lottery either. Do you feel, here's a serious one, the new move to buy more local would be beneficial to the environment long term? I hope so. I love things like pineapples, which now you can grow locally, but there's something to be said for global trade. And the Silk Road, there was a book about the Silk Road recently, which is a wonderful book. So there's so much about that, but it's great to buy local. I think I may have told the story about when I was in France, and French are such good eaters, and it was only about I was going to menu, and they all had the same 5 things in the menu. And I asked my mom, I said, why do they have the same? Why are they all having the same dish? That's not good. One of the restaurants should have something completely different. He said, well, that's what's in season. And so, yeah, you eat what's in season because that's the most delicious thing, really. The stuff that's grown 2 miles away, not the stuff that's been shipped over from 3,000 miles. So the least we can, the less we can ship things 3,000 miles, especially if we can grow them next door, which is just ridiculous. The more we can move away from that, and the more we can incentivize moving away from that, the better it's going to be. As I say, I've got a whole Earth Day sermon which you can listen to on YouTube about that. In what non-water situations has it been advantageous to you to be amphibious? The middle two. And what would you pick, or a shovel? Don't have an answer to that. There's some that are just Zen cones. I don't know. This is my last one, unless you have any others at the last minute. So why is there suffering? I think we may have talked about this. I'm going to save the full answer because we're almost at half an hour, and that's long enough. And I don't know the answer. But I have been thinking a lot about the earthquake of 1755. I know that's going to sound weird to a lot of folks, but 1755, where there was a terrible earthquake in Portugal. And a lot of people started to think about why is there suffering? Europe was just getting modern, things were just great. and it happened on a Sunday, and so people were going to church, and the worst possible thing happened. I said, why? And some of the answers, I don't know. I think the Book of Job, which I mentioned last time, is key on like getting away from all the farcical, terrible answers. And when the AIDS crisis came out, people said it was because gay sex was unnatural, which is both terrible, and also notice that now that what's happening is it's mostly affecting people up in their 70s who are gathering together. COVID is mentioning that, but nobody's saying, oh, it's because church services are unnatural, right? Which is the natural extension of that ridiculous logic. So, I mean, Jesus called this out at the Tower of Siloam, where he said, it's not, things don't happen because somebody's, it doesn't happen. You don't suffer more than somebody else because you're a worse person. It's just, you can see at a glance, if you know enough people, that's not the way it is. Wonderful people had terrible things happen to them. And I don't want to say terrible people, but it's all just seems so happenstance, and all of us suffer. So it's a great leveler in a way. So why is there suffering? I don't know. There's a couple of possible answers. There is a side to suffering that says that it kind of helps us, not helps us along the journey, but it helps round us out as human beings. I mean, if you imagine a life without any suffering, and the Buddhist story talks about kind of Buddha at the beginning of his life not having any suffering, or The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde. And without suffering, life is it's a lot less poignant. I mean, it'd be a wonderful thing, but it's hard to imagine. It certainly wouldn't be human in the way that we understand human. But even with that, it's hard to justify how terrible suffering is. And I won't go into the example, about all the awful things that happened. It was Holocaust Memorial Day just the other day. So I think the faithful answer is really to say we don't know, we're not God, which is the answer in Job, at least from the Judeo-Christian standpoint. But that we are not to be the agents of suffering if we can help it. We're not to inflict suffering on someone else. That's not our role as creatures on this planet. We may not be able to avoid suffering sometimes, but we certainly shouldn't be looking to inflict that on one another. And we should try to find meaning amidst the suffering. Sometimes we can't find meaning to the suffering. Sometimes it just doesn't come. And I think when people are at their worst, the last thing you want to do is kind of try and give meaning to suffering when people are really going through the valley of the shadow, and people are really grieving, going through horrible times. So it's not about, then you just want to give them a glass of water and say, or keep on keeping on and get to the next day. So, but when it comes to suffering over the course of a lifetime, to try and say, can we live a meaningful life, even when these things come out of the blue that may leave us debilitated, may completely take our lives away, maybe the end of it, or may leave us feeling angry and sad and bitter and all of those perfectly natural emotions. And I think the answer is yes. I mean, it's a profound yes, that we can still find meaning in the midst of that. And I think it's a yes we have to make with commitment. It's not an intellectual yes. It's a wholehearted yes, a leap of faith yes, into a meaningful life in the midst of suffering that we can't explain away. And so I think we all have a sort of opportunity. I was going to say responsibility, but it's really up to you, right? We all have an opportunity to live into that yes. Deuteronomy 30 says, choose life. And it talks about, it's not that hard to do. Of course, it is hard to do in a way, but it's not that far away. You can just choose to live as meaningfully as we can, knowing there is suffering that we can't never completely get a hold over. We can never really understand completely. And if we try to understand it, we're probably avoiding the truth, to be honest, or staying away from the truth. But if we live with the mystery of that suffering and yet still try to live meaningfully, something wonderful can come out of it. Anyway, I went on too long. I'll try and talk more about the meaning of suffering next week. But it's been wonderful having you all on this call. If there's anything else you'd like to put on there, I don't just double check here. I'll try this again in another 3 weeks, something like that. Time for more questions. I don't know if that's going to. Oh, there's more questions. Oh, here we go. This thing wasn't working. And Aunt Dillis, wonderful. Hi to Aunt Dillis. I think it was a different Dillis because she's not old enough to be an aunt, but hi to both Dillises. Most memorable experience I had of communion was when a few people were squashed into a living room and passing bread to each other in an informal way. That's powerful. Wow. I think those informal communions, I think there's something really powerful about that. Lord is a male word, surely. It is. It is. Might be something said for Our Lady, right? That could be a powerful way of envisioning God, though many people prefer to Mary or something like that. What can atheists expect when they live their life in denial? I mean, I'm a universalist, which means I think we're all going the same place. So I would like to think that atheists can expect a hug. I would hate to think that on the basis of a theological choice, people are consigned to one way or the other. That's what it's not up to me, but I don't know. For me, embracing the divine isn't about making a choice about whether God exists. It's about just living into the fullness of life and God's reality here. Some information on what you'd rather be a bee or a wasp, which I didn't know. Somebody said Lewis said I took a service once where someone said to me afterwards, "You said God so many times without ever saying God." I'm not so good at that, but I think that's really important. Yes, I need the hair clippers. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Some might say they don't believe in heaven. Go and tell it to the man who lives in hell. Well, I think we'll close with that. So some really good wisdom from Noel Gallagher. And so many people are going through hell here on earth. My prayers and our love goes out to you if you're having a hard time, but I hope we can get a little bit of heaven here as well. Here's gratitude for the little blessings of life, including the blessings of being with one another. Lots of love to you all. Thank you all for tuning in. See you in 2-3 weeks, something like that. You can ask me any questions in between, and I'll do my best. Lots of love. Peace out. God bless.